Welcome to the Becoming Your Best Version podcast. I am your host, Maria Leonard Olson. I'm a civil litigation attorney in Washington, D.C., uh, podcast host. I am also a mentor to women in recovery, a journalist, author, TEDx speaker. And if you would kindly like the TEDx talks that I've done by going to marialeonardolson.com, I would greatly appreciate it. It's an algorithm game, and the more likes you get, the more visibility you get. Also, the best gift you can give to any author is to review their books. Even one word helps. So all links are in the on my marialeonardolson.com website. So I started this podcast 6 years ago because my work in the realm of women in midlife brought me into contact with amazing women who have inspired me and who I think will inspire you. So today we have a special treat. Listen to this. Who moves to a new country, one she has never been to, where she doesn't know anyone and doesn't speak the language, in the middle of COVID? Barbara Grassey did. She is a writer and expat living in the Algarve of Portugal. She has written more than 60 books, manuals, and home study courses over the last 2 decades for national speakers, new speakers, and small business owners. She ghostwrites business books for coaches, consultants, and speakers who know a book will take their business to the next level, but don't have time or desire to write it themselves. I help people tell their stories and create even more writers, Barbara says. All of them putting out words, beautiful words, changing the world one person at a time. Her book coaching and publishing business allows her to work from anywhere in the world with Wi-Fi. She is very happy she landed in Portugal. Her latest book, American Expat, Moving Abroad Solo After 60, chronicles her move to Portugal. It's a candid, often funny, sometimes even unintentionally, boots on the ground travel memoir that shows how she navigated all the firsts of a new life. In short, this is not eat, pray, love, Barbara quips. It's more move, panic, adapt. When she's not writing, Barbara spends her time walking along the Ria Formosa and petting all the good doggies, having coffee or wine with friends, and feeling guilty about not writing. You can learn more and follow her at barbaragrassy.com or connect with her on Facebook or YouTube. She has a Substack also called Welcome to My Expat Golden Girl Life. So, welcome, Barbara.
Well, hi, welcome to me. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really impressed that you've got 6 years under your belt. That's a lot of stick-to-itness.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of a selfish endeavor. I release a new podcast every Friday, and I always ask the same question at the end, which is, what do you do to become your best version? And it gives me so many great ideas. So I plumb the minds of interesting women and take what serves me.
Very smart.
So what made you decide to live abroad?
It was something I wanted to do from the time I was really young. I had read Kidnapped when I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and the idea of tramping through the Highlands and probably I was a little bit too early to really enjoy men in kilts, but the whole idea of the Scottish Highlands and just a whole different life really kind of stuck with me. And from the time really I was about 10, I wanted to live in Europe as a European, not as a tourist. And I went to Scotland and Ireland in 2001, and I found out exactly how cold Scotland is. It's very cold. And so um, I decided, and I decided to look farther south. And of course, I'm half Italian. My father's side is Italian. So first I looked at Italy. I was looking for warmer areas of Europe. I knew it was going to be Southern Europe. And I checked out Italy. And at the time I was checking it out, which, fast forward to 2020 with COVID, Italy was just down for the count with COVID. It was just rocked. And a friend who was a digital nomad said, take a look at Portugal. And I did. And it was something that I hadn't really considered before. And I thought, well, this looks warm, and it seems really easy to move there. Um, so I had got my sister-in-law is part Portuguese, so she had traveled to Portugal several times and she loved it. And I said, well, let me just see. I'll take what they call a scouting trip. I'll take a scouting trip in the summer. And of course, COVID hit and nobody was going anywhere. So by the time uh, everything was kind of down for the count. And I just said, this is it. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We don't even know if we're going to be alive tomorrow. So it was a do it now or never type of situation. So I looked into it while the whole world was locked down and the opportunity, just everything came together. But it took me a lifetime to get over here. And I would encourage people, if that's what they want to do, please do it sooner.
Wow. Well, was there a particular moment when you knew that moving to Portugal was the right decision for you?
It was probably many months in.
Hmm.
Because when I first got here, I didn't know anybody. I didn't speak the language beyond I can order a glass of wine, which I think is a very important thing to learn before you go to any foreign country. Learn how to order a glass of wine in the language. So it was probably, uh, and we'll probably get into it, but there's a lot of uncertainty when you move to a new country, and there's a lot of anxiety. And so it probably took me 6 months to a year before I relaxed in. But the thing that makes me realize that I'm in the right spot, and it's very, very strange to me. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. It was there was a narrow street and there was a football field. The playing fields for the high school were across the street. And in this little town that I'm in, this village, I'm on the main drag, which is barely 2 lanes. And in front of me, instead of football fields, is the Tavira Channel and the Ria Formosa. And what I love is that the people in this town, they'll just stop and talk to each other. So sometimes you'll see two cars just stop and the drivers are chatting with each other in the street, and nobody behind them honks their horn because they probably know the two people, right? So there's like this whole small town vibe to it, but
Hmm.
it reminds me so much of my neighborhood when I was very small, from the time up till 5 years old. And that's when I realized it's like I moved back to my childhood neighborhood. And it's, Portuguese, Italian, not too far apart.
Excellent. Are you going to learn how to speak Portuguese fluently?
It is it is my Everest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Portuguese people are so kind that you'll try to say something in Portuguese and they look at you like with the big brown eyes and they say, Portuguese is a very difficult language. They're just so nice about it.
Oh
But
my
yes, I
gosh.
am going to conquer Portuguese, and that's one of my big goals. I took a Portuguese language class, so I have my certifications if I want to become a citizen, but I really want to be able to get conversational in it. And at this point, I know a lot of words. I've got a vocabulary of about 2,000 words, but I'm not able to create sentences in the moment. I have
Hmm.
to kind of write things down and ask. So I'm prepared. And then they speak back to me, and I'm like, oh man, I'm lost. There, I
Yeah.
was doing so well getting the sentence out. And I wasn't. The thing you have to do is prepare for what the answer is going to be so that
Hmm.
you can continue on. And that's my next step. These are really baby steps here, Maria.
Yeah. Well, it's better than nothing. When I was in Portugal, I met a fair amount of people whose names were John, but the way you say John in
Well,
Portuguese is impossible for me.
it's
Something like
João.
Joai, Joar.
João. Yeah,
Yeah.
João.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. So, aside from language, what were the biggest cultural differences you had to adjust to after moving there?
I will say every day for the first year or more was a navigation. And there are still days that you navigate. So, for instance, going to the grocery store, you are you will see certain brands that you know. There are Ruffles potato chips, and I think probably like some Doritos or certain things like that. But you have to, something as simple as going to the grocery store was an incredibly high anxiety situation. Outside of the fact that it was COVID and you were inside and everybody was masked and they were only letting a certain amount of people in, you the grocery stores are set up with a different logic for the most part.
Hmm.
So you're trying to figure out what you're looking at, and the labels are all different. You're not quite sure what's what. And that was I mean, I don't think it's really a cultural thing. It's just a relearning thing where you have to figure out how they package things. For instance, hot dogs here come in glass jars.
Mm.
And yeah, and it's a slightly different consistency. Uh, let's just put it that way. Baking soda, which you get, you can go to the pharmacy and you get, 3 boxes for 2.50. And of the Arm& and Hammer baking soda here, for the longest time, the largest amount of baking soda I could find was like in a packet. So you sit there and you say, I can't find baking soda. There's no baking soda in this country. And what you don't know is that, yeah, there's baking soda. It's just packaged differently.
Mm.
And so you have these little McCormick sized packages of baking soda. I'm thinking, I cannot scrub my counters with this. I need a big box of baking soda.
Mm.
So that was one of the harder things, is just adjusting to the different kinds of foods and understanding that it's going to be packaged differently. And when you first get here, there's certain foods that you miss and certain things that you just can't find them. You think, oh no, why can't I find this? And then you realize that it might take trips to 2 or 3 different stores to find the exact thing you're looking for,
Mhm.
but almost everything can be found.
Yeah.
And there's simple, stupid things like I couldn't find vanilla for baking. There's, of course, there's vanilla, but you just have to find the right store that carries that. Convection
Yeah.
of sugar was another one. I'm pretty food based. I guess that's
Yeah.
kind of obvious. the
So
the
what?
thing
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry. I just want to say that culturally, the thing that I love the most here, and because I'm on the main street, I hear a lot of it, is that in my village, at least, everybody greets everybody. So all day long, you hear "Bom dia, tudo bem, como estás?" And it's just, it warms your heart to know that these people all grew up together and they all know each other. Like the families have been here for ages, and they like each other and they get along, and there's a certain amount of civility that goes with the culture. They're just a very kind people.
Mm.
And and gosh, to I just like the old men on the benches when I come back from my walk, they're all, hey, bon dia, like bon dia. And they know, like, they must call me the Bon Dia girl because that's about all I can say. But again, it's just nice when somebody waves and speaks to you and you feel like you're part of the community.
Yeah. So what would be your advice to someone who is considering moving abroad?
It's not as hard as it first appears. When I first looked into getting a residency visa, I was overwhelmed by the paperwork. I thought, oh my God, how do you sort through all this paperwork? And I ended up getting, I'm a list maker. It's everything is on a list because I
Mhm.
love to check things off. So I got the list of what I needed as far as paperwork for moving. And I did one thing at a time. So the first thing I did was I downloaded the application and I found a translated application. Thank you. So I could fill out the application with the English application and then move it over to the Portuguese application. Then I had to get fingerprints done. Then I had to do this, I had to do that. So, but if you break it down into steps, you can get through the whole thing. And once you, I couldn't believe it because I was just so, I thought, oh, wow, this is really complicated. Once I got into it, I realized, no, it's just a step by step. And for anybody moving abroad or anybody doing anything in life, just about everything is figure outable.
Mhm.
And if you don't know, look at Google, look at YouTube.
Mhm.
I mean, I can fix a lot of things by going to YouTube. So I would say be open to the fact that it's going to be a learning experience and you're going to hit overwhelm 8 times in a week. So take a step back, take a breath, and then attack it again. There were certain things on the application. It's a very basic application, but there are certain things I couldn't figure out the logic of what they were asking. And so I filled out what I could. I hit overwhelm because I couldn't figure out what they were asking on certain things. I came back to it the next day and I said, "Oh, I think they want this." And you go online and you check, and somebody says, "Yeah, that's what they mean by that." So it all gets done, but you have to understand that you're going to hit roadblocks and you have to either work your way around them, take a breath, step back, because things sometimes become clear the next day when your brain is working a little bit better, or even uh, for example, if you have an issue on anything and you're working on it and working on it, and you can't figure it out, if you just grab somebody and start telling them, say, "Hey, I've got this accounting problem. I can't figure out where this missing amount is." And you start telling them, something clicks in your brain because now you're not reading it and trying to figure it out. You're talking to somebody else. And I think it works in another section of your brain, and all of a sudden the answer becomes clear. So you'll have the answers. It just might take a little bit more work than you're used to.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. So you've talked a little bit about this, but what have been your biggest challenges with relocating?
Uh, the language one, because and really it's a challenge only in that because a lot of people here speak English, the younger people in particular, but it's a challenge in that you're a little bit outside. And I think that's probably one of the big things about being an expat is that you are an outsider. And most of us are very used to being on the inside, being in the in club. So getting used to the fact that you're a little bit on the outside, no matter how kind and friendly people are, they've got their own life going on. They're not responsible for making sure you're comfortable. That's probably one thing. I think the challenge here is dealing with uncertainty. That's the biggest challenge. And you have to be okay with not knowing all the answers all the time.
Hmm.
So, for instance, when you live here on a visa, when you live anywhere on a visa, laws are constantly changing. So you're not certain how your renewal is going to go, or you're not certain if you're going to need different documentation in order to get your next renewal. So there's a lot of uncertainty that just goes with the territory, and you have to be okay with that. I know a lot of us like to control everything,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to just kind of go, "I'm just going to have to wait and see how this works out. And I'll have to adjust my plans accordingly." That's the biggest challenge, is not knowing and not being able to control it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, have you found an American expat community there?
Oh, tons of them. There's, yeah, when I first, there's about 10,000 American expats here.
Hmm.
And there's, I think, 10 million people in the country, 10,000 US expats. And there are tons of expat meetups, groups for certain things. When I first got here in this area, I would go to luncheons for ladies, but I'm not really a lady who lunches. So I met some nice people there. There are expats in my village, which is surprising because there's 14, it's smaller than my high school. There's 1,400 people here. And I would say probably 100 expats from various countries. Most of my friends are British or American, some Portuguese, but mostly British and American expats right now because I don't speak the language. But there are a ton of groups around. There's a lot of support for people who are moving in and who need help. The expat groups on Facebook, one in particular, Americans and Friends PT, has the best files for everything you need. I always recommend them because whenever I need to find out how something is working, I go to their files, and they are just so comprehensive, and they make sure the information is right before they post it. So that's about the best group I've found online for
Is
that. But
that specifically for Portugal or other
that one
countries?
is specifically for Portugal.
Uh-huh.
And but if you're moving to Italy, there are Italian expat groups on there. There's an Americans who want to become Italian citizens group. So Facebook has its issues, but they have a lot of groups that are super helpful. And I know that there are German expat groups and British expat groups because I'm in one of the British expat groups. So there's a ton of support around when you move to a country, and certain countries always come up as places where US citizens move to as expats. And it's things like Costa Rica is always a big one, Thailand, and apparently Chiang Mai is probably like the big thing where expats move. Uh, Portugal is pretty big for US citizens, but surprisingly, we're a very, very small percentage of the non-Portuguese residents here. Brazilians are by far and large, they're the uh,
Hmm.
most expats from Brazil. So there are just certain places where American citizens end up, and I don't know if it's because of the glossy magazines that promote living overseas, or if it's just that I have a friend that was going to move to Spain. His parents were from Spain, but then he's got a friend who's in Thailand, and the guy's like, "Come to Thailand." He's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to move to Thailand." I'm like, "Okay, go for that." Like, so sometimes it's just where your friends are, and you end up going, "Hey, I think I'll go over there." And that's kind of fun. Digital nomads, I think, are really catching on, and that's a great way to go spot to spot to spot and see where you want to live.
Yeah.
Vietnam is also another big place for US expats now. I
Yeah.
think it's because the living is so inexpensive there.
Yeah. What are a couple of mistakes that you see new expats making when they move abroad?
Ooh, okay. Sometimes we're ugly Americans. I see sometimes that people get upset because things don't run here the way they do in the States.
Mm.
Uh, and no, they're not going to. It's a different culture. We're, if a concert starts at 10 o'clock, it might start at 11 or midnight. It's Nobody's in a rush here to get things over with. So coming in and explaining to people how things should be done is really a no-no, and I see it happen a lot.
Mm.
Um, the other thing I see happen is that people really need to build a social net, and they'll come in and they'll just, I guess, go about it all wrong. I'm socially awkward. I'm an introvert, and I kind of depend on extroverts to adopt me, and I've been very fortunate. But I also see people who are extroverts that come in and want to be in the thick of things right away, and they manage to somehow be a little bit too aggressive about it. And it's funny because sometimes the expat community goes all Amish on you and they'll shun you. And,
Mm.
like, it's kind of fun to watch.
Mm.
I'm not above it,
Wow.
but if somebody is just rude, like, we're guests here in the country, you should not treat your host badly. And there are some people who are they come in kind of arrogant and rude and they know everything. And it's embarrassing to have somebody who is also an American berating a waiter or something. It's like, you just don't do that. You're a guest. And I don't think you should ever lose the idea that you're a guest and you should behave well in the country. So really, that's the big thing, is don't try to tell people how to run their lives. And I think that goes for anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
And
Definitely.
be polite. Like, it's like your mother told you.
Yeah. So what are some things you miss about from the US?
I miss my friends
Yeah.
for sure. We do Zoom calls and things like that, but it's not quite the same. There are I sometimes miss the conveniences. We have food delivery, for example, and I'm trying not to use it because if I get in the habit of ordering a pizza, that's going to be bad. Like, I just know I
Yeah.
don't need to go down that road. But there are certain things, that the convenience of certain things. I don't have a car here. I have an electric scooter, so I
Nice.
go tooling. Yeah, I know. I like to go ciao. I get my little scooter. I go ciao. Um, the convenience of having a car was, and my car sat in the driveway 3 days out of 7. I didn't use it a whole lot when I lived in Florida, but when you want it, you want it. So not being able to travel as much as I would like to because I don't have a car is an inconvenience. It's not insurmountable. I can rent a car, I can take the train, I can take the bus, but it's sometimes I want to go up to the big grocery store and I sit there and kind of look at the weather and go, is it going to rain? I don't want to get rained on my scooter. And of course, right now it's kind of cold. So you have to gear up. I got my gloves and my leather jacket and I try to stay warm. So that's an inconvenience. The other thing I miss, and this has really helped my growth in more than one way, is there are certain foods that I miss, and it's stupid stuff like Twizzlers, right? So people bring me Twizzlers from the States, and I actually found a substitute here, which is actually more addictive than Twizzlers. But one of the things I miss was American desserts because the desserts here are everything's like a little bit healthier, but they're really big on honey and caramel and almonds and like custardy type things. And I am a chocolate, chocolate, chocolate girl. Like sometimes you look and there's Nutella in there. I'm like, no, I do not want Nutella. I want chocolate. Um, so
What
I
about
have learned.
pastel de nata? Do you not
Oh,
like that?
you know what? I do like pastel de nata, but it's not my favorite thing.
Uh,
Okay, I can eat, a 200-calorie pastel de nata, or I can have a 200-calorie cupcake. I'm going to have the cupcake because it's chocolate. And I
mm,
do like pastel de nata, but it's not my favorite thing. So I've learned how to bake a lot of things that I would just, buy at the store in the States. I've become a much better cook than I ever was in the States. So I guess it was a growth experience I didn't really want, but now with the baking, not cooking, but baking, I really enjoy. Everybody got cookies for Christmas this year.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, was the bureaucracy, getting the visa, healthcare, etc., was that very difficult?
Um, Getting the initial visa for me was not nearly as difficult as it is for people now. It's gotten a little bit more difficult in that people moving here need to have a 12-month lease in place before they apply for their visa.
Mm,
And so that means they probably have to come over here, do a scouting trip, find where they're going to live, get a get a lease, and there's going to be some time lag between getting their visa and getting to use that apartment or place that they're moving to. And a lot of people are really upset. There's like, well, I'm going to have to pay for this apartment for 2 months when I'm not there. It's like, yeah, that's, I just consider that part of the cost of moving.
mm.
So you get you get a 12-month lease, you put in the application, you get your FBI background check. That's all normal. Um, the thing that I've seen is that people have a really hard time because they see the whole thing at once and they don't take it step by step. But it's really not too bad. So there's bureaucracy, and now you have to go up to. There's actually a company that looks at all your paperwork before it's submitted to the embassy, so the embassy isn't wasting its time. So you have an appointment with what's called VFS Global, very frank service, VFS. Um, and they go through all your paperwork and they check it and let you know what you have, what you don't have. And then they send it to the embassy, and the embassy approves it and stamps your passport. What I didn't know, I knew I had to check in with immigration when I got here, and it turned out that I was okay because I was in Airbnbs. I could use Airbnbs for the first 6 months when I came. Now you need the lease, and that's really the hardest part. Um, so when I came, I did not know there was an in-country immigration appointment. I had no idea. I was clueless. I was like, hey, I got here. This is great. So my in-country appointment got pushed back due to COVID, which was great because I had to renew my passport and do certain things that I wasn't aware of. So I got that taken care of. But for people coming in, right now there's a lot of delays with the in-country appointments, and people are getting pushed back on that. And we're all impatient. We all want to get settled in, and that's a real frustration point right now. They've changed over their immigration service, and the computer system's not quite online, and certain things just aren't working, and it's just a slower pace. And then there's a strike, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's one of those things. But it's the bureaucracy wasn't bad. My health insurance, you buy a health insurance plan for the year just to get your visa, and it was maybe $300-400. And people said, well, it's not a very good health insurance plan. It's like, no, it's just part of the cost of getting your visa. You have to look at it as, I want to do this. It's going to cost me a certain amount of money, and certain portions of that are just lost cost. And once I got here, I got health insurance and I got it through my bank. So you're good on health insurance up to about the age of 70 for private insurance. After that, from 70 to 75, you're really limited as to what you can get as far as health insurance. And after 75, there's basically one choice, and still not bad. My health insurance rates right now are about $250 a month
Wow, that's great.
for private insurance. Yeah. And that includes dental, that actually is a dental plan. Not
Wow.
that fake $10 dental plan add-on that doesn't do anything.
Wow.
They actually do things, so it's great.
So, do you have any regrets about moving?
The only regret is that I didn't do it sooner in life, honestly.
Mm.
I and I wasn't able to do it sooner, really, because part of being here, I'm on a G7 passive income visa. I took early retirement, early Social Security to have the passive income to show uh, to the immigration people. So for me, if I could have done it sooner, I would have. But everything kind of came together exactly right. It was my landlord's where I was living for 10 years decided to sell the condo. COVID hit. Business was down, mostly closed down. So there wasn't a whole lot of business going on. It was just the perfect time to move. And I think because it had been a goal for so long, I find bucket lists that I wrote back in the 90s, and every bucket list I've ever written has said live in Europe for at least a year. Everyone
Mm.
so it took me 30 years. That's horrible.
No, you did it. Congratulations.
But do it sooner. If it's your dream, do it sooner. Start planning now.
Hmm. So I ask all of my guests the following question.
Okay.
What do you do to become your best version?
Okay. Well, let's see. I make it a practice to intentionally evaluate my goals and progress towards them. I told you I'm a list maker, right? So in marketing, we talk a lot about tracking and measuring results. And to do that, you've got to identify key metrics that are important to you. So key metrics in marketing might be sales and conversions and things like that. But key metrics in your life have to do with your own personal goals and your professional goals. So I intentionally sit down, and usually it's the first of every month. I've got goals for the month, and they look a lot like the goals from last month. And I hate that, but it's the type of thing where if something's on my list for more than 3 months, I'm like, just take care of that thing. But I think the beginning of the year, everyone has their New Year's resolutions and they kind of set out their goals for the year, but they set out the things that they think they should want. And I think you need to be a lot more intentional about the person you want to be and the way to get there. So for me, I can set out quantitative goals. For instance, for my business, I want to make 10% more revenue this year than I did last year. And guys will always be, I'm going to 10 times my business this year. Like, get realistic, set realistic goals. But the other thing is that to be your best you're looking at qualitative goals. And sometimes qualitative goals are hard to measure. So, for instance, if I want to be a better friend to my circle, I can say, okay, to do that, I'm going to need to be more in touch with them. I need to schedule calls every week or every other week or once a month or whatever. But the call isn't the being better. It's what you do on that call. It's what you do in between the calls to be a better friend. The calls are just a reminder that you have made a goal of being a better friend to your friends, right? So sometimes you use a quantitative trigger to get a qualitative result, which sounds really nerdy. but it's what happens. Um, we all get caught up in our own lives, right? So, for instance, when you write a book, there's a section that we call the messy middle, and that's where you get lost in the weeds and you can't figure out how to write your way out of it. And if you've worked out the plot, you have a pathway to get out of the messy middle. And life is the messy middle. I mean, life is just messy. So if you have written goals that you have intentionally set and you've got them written down and you have a plan for achieving those goals, whether it's a bucket list or something that's so detailed it looks like you could do the D-Day invasion, that plan, that written down list keeps you on track. And I think people just need to be more intentional about what they're setting out to do. We all want to lose weight. We all want to be fit, whatever. I'm not going to lose weight. I want to be happy. So to me, there are sometimes you have to pick and choose your goals, and sometimes you need to reevaluate your goals. Like I'm always, oh God, I want to lose 20 pounds. That's like a forever goal. I'm probably not going to lose that 20 pounds. And if losing that 20 pounds or the thought of having to lose it is going to make me miserable and feel bad about myself, then maybe I need to reevaluate that goal and say, hey, you know what? You're 67 years old. You can't eat a chef salad 3 days in a row and drop 5 pounds like when you were 25, which I really miss. So let's reevaluate that 20 pounds and say, hey, let's just try to live a healthy lifestyle. So sometimes you have to take a step back and say, is this a goal that I want to spend my energy on at this time? And that's huge because you can get yourself all crazy trying to achieve a goal that's not going to happen and miss out on achieving three goals that you could make happen.
Mm.
So I don't know. That's
Got
just
it.
me.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, that's good. I have definitely become more intentional in this chapter of my life. So I thank you for sharing those tips and your
Well, thank
reflections,
you.
and encourage all of you to go to Barbara Grassy, GRASSEY.com, and
Mhm.
follow her on social media. Thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Cheers.